"What are you doing here? Are you mad?" The receptionist whispered sharply, her eyes wide with confusion. Alara didn't answer. She simply walked past the glass desk and into the elevator. Her heels clicked with quiet determination. Her heartbeat was fast, but her face showed nothing. Calm, cold, controlled. She had waited for this day 2 hours earlier. She had stood in her tiny apartment, staring at the cracked mirror. Her suit was clean but plain. Her hair was tied neatly. She clutched a blue folder, the edges worn from weeks of practice. Inside were her ideas, her numbers, her vision, everything she believed could change the world. Now, on the 31st floor of one of New York's most powerful VC firms, she stepped into the meeting room. The room was wide and white. A long table ran across the middle, surrounded by 6 men in suits, laptops open, coffee cups half full, bored expressions already forming. She stood at the end of the table. For a moment, no one looked at her. Then one of the men raised his head. "You're the founder," he said, brows raised like it was a joke. "Yes," she said calmly. "Alara James, founder of Kindratech." That was when it started. A chuckle, then a second. Someone didn't even bother hiding their smile. "You've come here alone. No co-founder, no CTO. No," Alara replied. One of the older men leaned forward. "And you're asking for how much?" $1 million in exchange for 10% equity, she said. He laughed openly now. "You want $1 million? You didn't even bring a prototype." "I brought the plan," she said, lifting the folder. "Listen," another man said, waving his hand. "This is not a college project. This is a real room with real money. You can't just walk in with a piece of paper and dreams." "I understand," she replied. Her voice was still soft, still steady. A younger man, trying to be polite, spoke next. "Look, Miss James, your idea, this app for community-based problem-solving is nice, but ... How do I say this? It's not realistic. People don't care about helping others. You'll never scale it. Actually, the numbers show." "Forget the numbers," the older man cut in. "You don't look like someone who knows what it takes to build a company." Silence followed. Even the polite one didn't interrupt. The words hit her harder than she expected, not because they surprised her, but because they were so predictable. She looked around the table. 6 faces, 6 suits, all staring at her like she didn't belong. And maybe they were right. Maybe she didn't belong in that room, but she would own the building one day. She placed the folder gently on the table. "Thank you for your time," she said, almost in a whisper. They didn't even reply. One man had already turned back to his laptop. Another was checking his phone. She walked out, down the hallway, into the elevator, past the receptionist, who didn't say another word. Out onto the street. It was raining. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Users are growing. We hit 10K this morning," from Daniel, her only employee, her only believer. She didn't smile. Not yet, but inside her, something had changed. That night, she didn't sleep. She didn't cry either. She worked. She sent emails. She called a contact her late brother once introduced her to a quiet investor from Berlin who liked disruptive underdogs. He said he'd take a look. By morning, he wired $50. Oh, it wasn't much, but it was more than $1 million when placed, in the right hands, for the next few days. Alara vanished from the VC world's radar, but her app, DIDN, single quotes T.KYNDRA Tech, the impossible idea, went live. It was raw, buggy, and full of glitches. But it worked. People began using it. Small communities, women's shelters, single mothers, street vendors, all started helping each other with resources, services, and advice. Alara had created something that made strangers act like family. By the end of the week, tech blogs were writing headlines. The social startup built with $0 and heart. No investors, no noise, just impact. The VC firm didn't notice at first, but by day 10, one of their interns brought the numbers. "Sir," he said, placing a file on the table, "this app Kindred just crossed 100,000 users. In 9 days." The room went silent. "What? That girl?" one of the partners asked. "Yes, it's going viral in community support groups and even schools. There's already interest from 2 NGOs. Now they were all alert." "Did we fund this?" someone asked. "No, sir. She pitched here." passed. The older partner who had mocked her stared at the wall for a moment. "Schedule a meeting," he said. "Let's see what she wants now." But Alara didn't answer their calls. She was too busy building. 3 weeks later, the story made national news. She had just secured a partnership with a major charity organization, one that had originally funded early versions of Facebook in its nonprofit days. An invitation came again, this time to a tech conference. She was asked to speak on the main stage. That night, she wore the same suit she had worn to the pitch meeting. She stood in front of thousands. This time, no one laughed. She told her story, simply, quietly, truthfully. After the event, a man approached her. "Miss James," he said, "I'm the CEO of Virion Capital. I'd like to talk." She remembered the name. They owned smaller firms, including the one that had humiliated her. "I heard your story," he continued. "Impressive. And I think we can do something more than just funding your company." Alara raised an eyebrow. He leaned in. "They're broke," he whispered. "Too many bad bets. If you're interested, the whole firm is for sale." She didn't answer that night. She went home, sat alone in her room, and stared at the blue folder. Then she smiled for the first time in weeks. 12 days later, the building on Fifth Avenue got a new nameplate. Under a holding company, Alara had quietly acquired a controlling stake in the firm that had once laughed her out of the room. No press, no photo ops, just one document. She walked into the office again, same hallway, same receptionist, but this time no one asked if she was mad. They just watched in silence as she stepped into the elevator, folder in hand. The app was live. It didn't look like much, just a white screen with 4 buttons. No branding, no flashy graphics. But it worked. At 3:12 a.m.t., someone in Detroit used it to request help fixing a broken wheelchair ramp. 2 hours later, someone 3 streets away, a retired carpenter, replied. Job done, no money exchanged, just goodwill. By morning, there were 30 such connections. By noon, there were hundreds. Alara sat at her small desk, eyes burning from lack of sleep. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard. Bugs, user reports, feedback. Everything was flowing in. She had no team, just Daniel, her old college friend and loyal developer, working remotely from Atlanta. Servers straining. He messaged. Good, she replied. It was happening. The idea that had been mocked, laughed at, rejected, it was alive. Not in a fancy boardroom or polished demo, but in the real world, among real people. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the wall. That pitch meeting, they had told her that people wouldn't care about helping strangers, that nobody had time for others, that the world was selfish. But those men didn't understand what it meant to struggle. They had never waited 3 hours in the cold for a food bank. They had never held their breath while their mother begged for rent help on the phone. They had never watched their brother bleed out on a sidewalk. Because no one called for help, Alara had lived that life, and her app wasn't just tech. It was a mirror of her past and a ladder for others climbing out. 2 days later, a woman named Julia in Kansas used the app to find emergency baby supplies. After a tornado, she wrote, I didn't think anyone would help, but a stranger came with diapers and food. Thank you. Whoever made this app, you saved us. Daniel forwarded the message. Alara didn't cry, but her hands trembled at that very moment. Back on the 31st floor of that VC firm, the same men were laughing at another pitch. A man in sneakers and a hoodie showed them a dog-walking NFT idea. They nodded politely. One of them said, Brilliant. No one mentioned Alara. They didn't even know what was coming. That night, Alara's app hit 50,000 users. It was trending on 2 small tech blogs, but one of them had the headline, Built by Ghosts, the app that came from nowhere. Someone posted it on Twitter, then Reddit, then TikTok. A young content creator in Brooklyn made a 60-second video about it. Y'all, this girl built a real app to actually help people. No ads, no subscriptions. Just pure humanity. We need to protect her at all costs. The video went viral. By sunrise, Alara had 5 new emails from reporters. She ignored all of them. Instead, she opened an old message in her inbox, one she had saved for a year. It was from her brother, Jordan. Before he died, he wrote, If they don't open the door, build your own house. I'll be waiting on the porch. Alara whispered under her breath, You see this, Jordy? I built the house. At noon, Daniel called her. Are you seeing this? What? We just got a message from Berlin. Alara opened her inbox. Kindra, tech has caught our attention. We believe in funding meaningful disruption. Let's talk. Otto Rice, Bluebridge Capital She, stared at the screen. Otto was one of the quiet billionaires, a man who rarely invested unless he believed something would change the world. He was offering $500,000 in seed funding on her terms. Alara replied with one line, I'll take half, and I'll take freedom, he agreed. She turned down two other offers that day, one from a major tech firm that wanted to acquire the app. Outright, they offered $2 million. She didn't even blink before saying no, because it wasn't about the money. It was about something deeper. That meeting room. Those faces. That laughter. She wasn't just building a product, she was building a storm. 2 weeks passed. Kindra Tech crossed 150,000 users. Schools started using it. Shelters, too. Even a small town in Ohio used it to organize a volunteer effort during a flood. It was no longer just a tool, it was becoming a movement. And the people who once said no still didn't realize what was happening. But they would. Alara was already making moves in silence. Daniel didn't ask questions. He just followed orders. She told him, I want a holding company. A shell. No connections to my name. Why? He asked. She looked at her screen, then said, because I'm going to buy the place that laughed at me. And this time, no one would see her coming. The apartment was cold. Alara sat alone on the floor, a single light bulb above her. No furniture, just her laptop, a notebook, and an old photo of her brother taped to the wall. Outside, the city buzzed. Inside, it was quiet. But inside her head, chaos. Memories came crashing in like waves. She was 10 when her mother disappeared. Gone just like that. No goodbye. No letter. Just an empty kitchen and a note from a landlord about overdue rent. Alara and Jordan, only 12, were left. Behind, no father, no family. Just 2 kids in a broken world. They bounced between shelters and foster homes. Sometimes they ate, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they were safe. Most times they weren't. Jordan always stood in front of her. When boys bullied her at school, he fought them off. When she failed math, he stayed up late teaching her. When the world pushed, he pulled her back up, until one night it didn't work. She was 19 when Jordan died. Wrong place, wrong time. He was walking her home from her part-time job at the diner, just a few blocks. But they crossed the wrong street. Gunshots. A mistake. A fight that had nothing to do with them. Jordan pushed her down, took the hit. He died holding her hand. Alara didn't speak for 3 months. Not to anyone, not even to the counselor who tried helping her. She just wrote in a notebook, scribbles, numbers, maps, drawings. One line repeated again and again. Pain is just fuel if you hold it long enough. Years passed. She worked 2 jobs, cleaned offices at night, studied coding on public library computers during the day. She didn't chase dreams, she hunted survival. But slowly, her hands started building again. She started helping women at her shelter connect with each other, sharing rides, babysitting, meals. She used a whiteboard, then Excel, then a basic Google form. That idea, the system of neighbors, helping neighbors. It grew, and one day she realized, if it can work in the shelter, it can work anywhere. That was the seed of Kindra. Back in the present, her phone buzzed. Daniel had sent a screenshot. Dude, we're at 200K users, and we just got an email from a school district in Chicago. They want a custom version for students. Alara stared at the numbers. Then she looked at the photo of Jordan. She whispered, we're just getting started. But she was tired. No sleep, no rest, just fire. The pressure was growing. The world wanted interviews. Investors wanted numbers. Partners wanted contracts. But all she wanted was a moment to breathe. Still, she pushed forward, because that's what broken people do. They don't stop. They just build through the cracks. A journalist emailed her, we'd love to tell your story. A Black woman founder who came from nothing. It's inspiring. She didn't reply. Not because she wasn't proud, but because that wasn't the full story. This wasn't about being inspiring. It was about justice, about proving that pain can build empires. Late at night, she opened her notebook again, same one she carried since her teen years. She flipped to the last page, one line written in red ink. "They will regret laughing." She circled it, then texted Daniel, "It's time. Set up the legal structure. I want an acquisition route mapped out. Quiet, no noise," he replied. "Wait, you're serious? You really want to buy them?" "Yes," she typed. "I want them to sit in the same room when I walk in, and I want them to know what broken really looks like after it wins." The storm inside her wasn't rage. It was memory, and memory doesn't fade. It sharpens. Alara wasn't a miracle. She was a storm, made of scars, and she was coming back, not to pitch, but to conquer. In the boardroom, the mood was different. The usual jokes, the easy laughs, they were missing today. A partner at the table scrolled through his tablet frowning. Another said, "You mean that little community app?" "It's not little anymore," the first man muttered. On screen, 250,000 users. Active in 14 cities, signed pilot deal with Chicago Public Schools. Upcoming partnership with the United Nations Development Program. Silence. Someone finally asked, "Wait, wasn't that the girl we—" "Yes," the partner said sharply. That girl, meanwhile, across the city, Alara was sitting in a quiet coffee shop with a lawyer. A plain folder lay between them. Inside it, the blueprint of her revenge. "I've created the shell company," the lawyer said. "We'll keep your name off every document. No connections, no trails. This is more than business now. Do you sure you want to do this?" She looked out the window. Rain tapped lightly on the glass. "They laughed at me," she said softly. "They mocked where I came from. I don't want revenge. I want silence. I want to walk into their house and own the floor beneath their feet." The lawyer nodded, then handed her the pen. She signed without blinking. Back at the VC firm, anxiety was growing. They had ignored Kindra. Now, "You're not going to believe this. Kindra just rejected an $8 million acquisition offer from Stratos Ventures." "What?" She told them the mission's bigger than the money. That sentence echoed in the room like thunder. The men who once laughed were now sweating. One of them whispered, "We should have taken her seriously." The storm was forming, but it was quiet. Too quiet, Alara. Made no noise on social media. No interviews, no viral speeches, no press. She just kept working. Every day, new cities joined the platform. Every night, she reviewed user stories with tears in her eyes. A woman who used Kindra to find shelter from her abusive husband. A teenager who raised money for school through the app's support tools. A retired vet who found free therapy sessions from strangers helping strangers. Kindra wasn't a startup. Anymore, it was a revolution in motion. And revolutions don't come with warnings. At 3 a.m., Daniel sent her a text. "Your quiet is making the world nervous." She smiled. That was the point. 3 days later, Alara stood outside a glass skyscraper in a black suit. She looked up. This was the building, the same one that swallowed her dignity months ago. Only this time, she wasn't going in to pitch. She was going in with the papers to own it. Inside, the firm's partners still didn't know who had made the highest bid for their struggling company. They were desperate. Cash flow was bleeding. 2 of their biggest investments had collapsed. A quiet acquisition was their only hope. They had no idea that the name on the purchase documents, Novolite Holdings, was Alara, her hand, her mind, her storm. One of the partners stood in the lobby that morning, waiting for the buyer's legal rep. He checked his watch, then sighed. "Hope it's someone we can work with." Moments later, Alara stepped out of the elevator. She didn't speak. She just handed him the final signed folder. The man looked confused. "Sorry, are you here for something?" He opened the folder, then froze the name. The signature. His face went pale. "You." Alara looked at him with the same stillness she had when they laughed at her. This time she whispered, "I didn't bring a pitch. I brought the deed." Storm had arrived, and it made no noise, only impact. The city lights blinked outside the tall windows. It was 9:47 p.m., and the office tower was mostly dark, except for one floor. Alara stood in front of the window, watching the traffic below. Her reflection looked calm, collected, unbothered, but inside her, the pressure was building again. Kindra Tech had just passed 300,000 active users. The servers were overheating. Daniel was running on energy drinks, and partners were lining up. But Alara had stayed silent. She didn't post. She didn't celebrate. She didn't blink dot because she knew something was coming, and this time she wanted to control the battlefield before the battle began. The elevator chimed. She turned as a tall man in a navy coat stepped out. He didn't wear a tie. His face was calm, his presence sharp. "Alara James," he said. "You're exactly what I expected, and more." "Mr. Delon Voss," she said. He nodded. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Voss was the CEO of Thorn & Light, one of the most powerful investment firms in North America. But unlike the men from her past, he didn't carry ego. He carried silence. He sat down across from her, placed a small black box on the table, and spoke. Inside that is a contract, equity, partnership, and strategic support. No control, just freedom. "All yours," Alara raised an eyebrow. "You're offering before I ask." "I've already seen enough," Voss replied. "You built a company that connects humans without exploiting them. That's not just rare. That's dangerous to the system I help control." Alara was quiet. "Tell me," he continued, "what's your real plan?" She leaned forward. "I want to rebuild the system that rejected people like me, with no shortcuts, no pity. I don't want to burn the world. I want to rebuild it brick by brick. On my terms." Voss smiled. "You're not here for funding," he said. "You're here for something bigger." "Yes," she said. "I want your silence and your shield." He nodded. "Then I'll give you both." Voss opened the box inside a single keycard. "What's this?" "It gives you access to my firm's shadow capital wing. No name, no press. You'll get the money, but more importantly, you'll get information." Alara picked up the card. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Voss looked out the window. "Because," he said, "I once had a sister who walked into a pitch meeting and never came back out. They didn't just kill her dream, they killed her spirit. You remind me of her, only you came back." Alara held the card tightly. This wasn't just a tool, it was armor, and with it, she could finish what she started. The next morning, the VC firm, the one that once laughed at her, received an internal email. Subject: Change in ownership message. Effective immediately, Novolite Holdings has assumed full operational control of your firm. A transition representative will arrive. Monday, they still didn't know the truth. They didn't know who Novolite was, but they were about to. That same day, a new account was created in the legal system, Novolite Fund 2, registered to acquire tech companies undervalued by the very firm Alara now owned, but it was a weapon. A scalpel aimed at everything that stood against her people. Her idea, her name. And behind her, Delon Voss watched from a distance, never speaking again, because that's what real allies do. They don't speak for you, they clear the space so you can speak for yourself. Alara now had the funds, the platform, the shield, and soon, the final confrontation. No reporters, no flash, no headlines, just a quiet room with a long table, 3 lawyers, and 1 black pen. Alara sat at the head of the table, her fingers calm, her eyes sharp. Across from her, the final documents lay stacked. It was the full acquisition agreement. The firm that once laughed her out of the room now sat in her hands. Owned, controlled. Rewritten. 1 of the lawyers looked nervous. "Are you sure you don't want the media involved?" he asked. "No," she said. "But this is history. I don't need them to witness it. I already witnessed the pain." The lawyer fell silent. Alara picked up the pen. It was the same pen her brother had used to sign her school forms. She had kept it for years. Now it would sign something else. She flipped to the last page. There. Above the line, Novolite Holdings Executive Authority, and below it, a blank space. She signed 1 stroke, then another. Then silence. It was done. The same firm that once called her unrealistic, unscalable, unqualified, now belonged to her. She stood up, nodded to the lawyers, and left without a word. No pictures, no applause, because true power doesn't perform. It acts the next day. The employees walked in like it was any other morning, coffee in hand, ties slightly loose. Conversations about tech stocks and sports, until one message appeared in every inbox. Internal notice effective today. All team leads will report to a new executive representative. A staff-wide announcement is scheduled at 2 p.m. Whispers began. Some thought it was a merger. Others thought it was a shutdown. No one guessed the truth. At exactly 2 p.m., the doors opened. A woman walked in wearing a sharp black blazer, her hair tied neatly, a simple watch on her wrist. Some employees didn't recognize her, but the partners, the ones who had laughed, did. Their faces froze. Alara walked to the front of the room. Calm, silent, centered. She opened a folder and placed it on the podium. "Let's begin," she said. No one spoke. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She simply read facts: funding misuse, biased rejection patterns, failure rates of their male-led startups versus rejected female pitches. Wasted millions on vanity projects, one missed opportunity that was now worth 8 figures. Kindrash paused. "Looked at the men I pitched to you," she said, "and you laughed." They didn't speak. "I'm not here to fire you out of revenge. I'm here to show you how wrong you were, not just about me, but about hundreds of people like me." She slid a performance report to the edge of the table. To start, she said, "David will be removed from the board." Gasps. David, the loudest among them, went pale. He opened his mouth to protest, but Alara held up a hand. "Not because you laughed, because you failed again and again and blamed others for it." He stood up, slowly, and walked out. No one stopped him, but I am no longer your guest. That evening, she sat alone in her new office. The same city that watched her cry in silence now stood beneath her. She didn't smile. She simply whispered, "Jordan, we're home." The papers were signed. The room had been reclaimed, and the storm had passed, but its name would stay forever. The elevator doors opened on the 31st floor. People glanced up from their desks, expecting someone ordinary, an assistant maybe, or a delivery person. But instead, they saw her Alara James, wearing the same suit she wore the first time. She was laughed out of this building. Not as a guest this time, not as a dreamer. She walked in as their boss. The glass walls of the boardroom shimmered under the morning light. Inside, the firm's partners were already seated, stiff, quiet, unsure. The new ownership, they didn't know who would walk in, and when they saw her, they froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Alara placed her folder on the table and took the seat at the head, the same seat one of them had told her she wasn't cut out for. "Good morning," she said, calm but sharp. "Let's begin." The first few slides were numbers, Kindra's impact, growth rate, user stories, not to boast, just facts. Then came the second half, a breakdown of every pitch their firm had rejected over the past 5 years. She spoke as the screen changed. Out of 412 rejections, 301 came from women-led teams. Of those, 226 were people of color. Not one received follow-up. The room stayed silent. Alara stood. "You didn't just reject ideas, you rejected lives, futures, generations." One man, the youngest of the partners, cleared his throat. "We were following the data." "No," Alara said. "You were following comfort, familiarity, ego." She walked slowly past each of them. "I was told I didn't look like someone who could build a company." She stopped behind the oldest partner, the one who had laughed first that day. "Tell me," she whispered, "what does a founder look like to you now?" He didn't answer. Alara returned to her seat. "This isn't just a firm anymore. It's going to be a fire starter." Someone raised a hand. "What do you mean?" "I'm converting this place," she said. "Half of all funds will go to first-time founders. Women, immigrants, disabled entrepreneurs, creators who never got the room. No more suits first." A few partners looked horrified, others relieved. "Then," she said, "if you can't build under these rules, you're free to leave today. I won't stop you, but this room will never laugh at power again." No one left. She closed her folder. "This meeting is over." She walked out with the same calm she walked in with, but behind her, the silence was louder than any applause. Outside the glass doors, junior staff clapped softly as she passed. Some smiled, some looked stunned. One young black intern stepped forward. "Miss James," she said quietly, "you're why I'm here, thank you." Alara nodded once. "Make them remember your name." The intern smiled. "I will." Alara entered her new office, sat down, and stared at the city once more. She whispered, "I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to rewrite the rules." The rejected had returned, and she had brought justice with her. The room was full. Employees, junior associates, board members, all gathered for the first official all-hands meeting under the new ownership. Everyone had heard the rumors. Some didn't believe them. Some hoped they were true. At exactly 11 o'clock m, the doors opened. Alara walked in. No guards, no assistants, no spotlight, just her voice and her silence. She stood on the platform at the front. Behind her was no logo, no banner, just a white screen that read, "Listen." For a moment, she said nothing. The room shifted uncomfortably. Then she began. "I walked into this building 9 months ago," she said, her voice clear, steady, quiet, not to take something, but to offer something. She paused. "I was?" Laughed out of this room before I could finish my first sentence. My idea was called a fantasy. My voice dismissed. No one spoke. Today, that idea is alive. It helps people every day. It built itself from concrete, code, and pain. And I didn't come back to gloat. She looked across the faces. I came back because no one should be treated the way I was. Alara took a breath. There are brilliant people out there who never make it past the door. Not because they're unworthy, but because the room refuses to listen. She looked directly at the board members in the front row. You didn't fail because of bad luck. You failed because you only heard echoes of your own voices. Silence. Then she turned to the staff, the interns, the overlooked, the doubted. Built Kyndra with no press, no money, just purpose. And I'm telling you this now, you don't need permission to build what the world told you not to. You just need one voice, yours. One woman in the back wiped her eyes. A man near the wall nodded slowly. No one dared interrupt. Then Alara said something that no one expected. "I won't be here every day. I don't believe in ruling from the top. I'll create space. I'll give tools, but you will shape this firm, not for profit alone, but for people." She stepped down from the platform. No applause, not out of disrespect, but because the room was too stunned, too moved, too changed as she walked out. Someone whispered. She didn't raise her voice. Another replied she didn't need to. That afternoon, internal emails flew. One staff member wrote, "I've worked here for 5 years and never felt seen until today." Another, "Alara James didn't ask for power. She earned it, and we felt it." And perhaps the most honest, "For the first time, I feel like this place might mean something." A woman once silenced had spoken, and the room finally listened. The walls were the same, the glass doors, the floor tiles, the hallway lights, but everything else, everything that mattered, had changed. It began quietly. The conference room, where once only suits sat, now had artists, teachers, single, mothers, students. Alara opened the pitch floor to those with no MBAs, no co-founders, no Silicon Valley connections. She called it the Unheard Room. Every Thursday, 1 hour was reserved for voices that had been ignored by the system, and some of the most brilliant ideas came from those hours. A refugee-built language app, a mental health hotline for factory workers, a food distribution network run by teenagers. Real people, real problems, real solutions. No buzzwords, no fakeness, just raw brilliance. Then came the redesign. Gone were the intimidating walls of gold and leather. They were replaced by stories, literally. Alara had the walls painted with names, every rejected founder, every immigrant who applied for funding and was ignored, every person who built something with nothing, in bold letters above the new entry wall. The world changed, so did we. The culture shifted to, instead of board meetings filled with numbers only, every session opened with one real user story. The first week, they read, "Kyndra helped me find shelter for my kids. I was ready to give up. Someone across town brought blankets. People cried. People listened. Even the hardest voices in the room went quiet because the company was no longer a machine. It had become a mirror, reflecting who they were supposed to be. Alara didn't demand this change with force. She led it with consistency. Every decision was rooted in one simple question: does this help people who are normally ignored? And if the answer was no, she'd walk away from the deal, no matter how big. One day, a popular investor group came with an offer. $50 million, they said. "We'll take your new model global, make it bigger, louder, put your name in lights." Alara looked at the papers, then smiled gently. "You still don't understand," she said. This isn't about lights. This is about quiet power. She pushed the papers back. They left confused. She didn't care. Employees stayed longer now, not because they were afraid, but because they felt seen. New hires came from places big firms usually never looked: community colleges, coders, single-parent households. For the first time, the office felt alive. One intern, in her final feedback form, wrote, "I thought I was applying to a company, but I walked into a movement." Alara sat one evening in her corner office, the lights low, the city calm. On her desk, two things: an old rejection email and a framed photo of Jordan. She held the email gently. The words still burned. "We don't see a clear path to success for your idea." She smiled. "You never had to," she whispered. "I did." The company that once silenced her now breathed. Through her, every wall, every room, every voice, shaped in her image. It was a Tuesday, the same day of the week she had once walked into that pitch meeting, same building, same city, but now the hallway had her photo on the wall. A quiet portrait, not flashy or posed, just her, sitting on a bench with a laptop. In the early days of Kyndra, a group of interns gathered under the photo. One of them pointed at the plaque below it. Alara James, founder, visionary, the girl who bought the room. They whispered the title like a legend. Did she really get rejected in this building? Did she really say no to 50 million? Did she really buy the entire firm? The senior manager beside them smiled. Yes, she did. All of it. Alara wasn't in the building that day. She hadn't been in weeks. She didn't need to be, because the rooms no longer needed her voice to remember her strength. The system she changed had kept her prints on every door, every wall, every meeting. Elsewhere, in a small-town school, a 12-year-old girl opened Kyndra on her tablet. She typed, "My mom lost her job. We don't have food. I'm scared." Less than 5 minutes later, a notification pinged. "Hey, sweetie, we're nearby. Dropping off groceries. You're not alone." That moment, that tiny act of care, was made possible by the empire Alara built. No ads, no press, just connection. Back in the city at a startup conference, someone asked the keynote speaker in one sentence, "What does power look like?" In today's world, the speaker smiled, then said, "Power looks like a girl they laughed at, who bought the room and never raised her voice." A month later, Alara sat at a quiet lake house far away from the city. No board meetings, no speeches, no headlines, and a school in Spain just adopted. Kyndra Alara nodded. "Let it grow, but don't let it change." He smiled. "We're protecting it." Then he paused. "You know, no matter what happens next, you change the story for people like us." Alara didn't respond immediately. She just looked out at the water. Calm and endless. Then whispered, "Good. Now let's disappear quietly. Let the work speak louder than we ever did." And so she did. No statues, no documentaries, no farewell tours. Just ripples. Everywhere. She had bought the room, but more importantly, she rewrote who the room was built for, forever. The end.